It's supposed to be learning. And it should be a panacea. And also, unfortunately, feel nothing but sorrow. Okay. Isha Hayu Anava of Merubin were on bottom of Lamed Gimel. Lamed Gimel 33a. Mishnah said if you have more berries than leaves on the hadas, then it's pasul. So Amar Rav Chisda says, Davazah Rabbeinu Agadol Amri. So Rav Chisda heard a few things from Rav. He was much younger than the students. Much younger than Rav's students. But nevertheless, there were a few things that he heard from Rav, and those things that he heard directly from Rav, he makes a big deal about by saying, this statement I heard from Rav. He says, the great teacher taught us. Rav is the first generation. And Eberster should help him. When did we say that that a hadas can't have berries? That's if they're all in one place on the hadas. They're all collected like a cluster in one place. But if it's spread out, it's not a problem. That's what Rav Chisda is saying in the name of Rav. Amalei Rava. Amar Rava. Rava says, Bach takes out the lay. He didn't say it to him. I'm not sure why that has to be. Rava learned by Rav Chisda. He could have said it to him. Says, Rava, Shnayim v'shleishim mekayim having menumar apostle. On an esrog, when you have spots on an esrog, if it's spread out in different places around the esrog, then it makes the esrog look like it's spotted, has blotches on it, and it becomes puzzle. So over here also by the hadas, if it's spread out in different places, those discolored or different colored berries, so then that's more of a problem. Not more kosher if it's spread out. The Gemara says, rather, if Rav Chisda made a statement in the name of Rav, this is what it was. There's more berries in the leaves, it's pasul. Rav Chisda says that this statement, Rav said it, and Eberster should protect him. When is there a problem with berries? That's only if the berries are black. But if the berries are green, I don't know what Eurykis means, green or yellow. How do they translate? The berries are yellow or green? But if let's say it's green. Euryk is green or yellow? No, it's used in different contexts. Then mini the hadasu. Then it's already a type of a hadas, as long as it's not black, a kasha. That's going to be acceptable. Well, Amar Rav Papa says, this is like a flashback from Nida. If it's red, then it's like black, Damyan, similar to being black. And black, we said, was a problem. Rav Chanina says that this black blood is really red. Just it was like spoiled. So red and black are sort of interchangeable when it comes to blood. What we're saying here as well is that red and black are interchangeable when it comes to berries. And if the berries are red, they're also pasul, as if they were black. Yeah. Okay. Emiyat and kasha said if you remove the berries from the hadas, then you've made the hadas kosher. Question is, when are you allowed to remove the berries? At what point? It says the Martinu Emas. When did you diminish the amount of berries? You know, there's a ratio of more berries than leaves is pasul. More leaves than berries is kosher. So at what point did you diminish the amount of berries? You just pulled them off. If you pulled it off before you tied the lulav pshita, then of course it's going to be kosher. Ella labasad dalag day. What the chiddush here is that you remove the berries after you tied the lulav. The Gemara says, well, that's taka chiddush. You tied the lulav, and it was puzzle, and then after it was tied, you took off the berries. Tifshit minei dichem ikar lavidichay. That means that when this was originally set up, this was rejected. It was invalid. And only afterwards it becomes, after you remove the berries, it becomes valid. But what we're seeing is at the time that it was being prepared for the mitzvah, being tied up, being bound, so it was rejected. And this should be an answer to a question we had before from Yirmiyah. Gemara says, you know what? You're actually removing the berries after you tied it, but it's still not a teretz. Still not an answer. Why? Not Yom Tov yet. It's not the mitzvah. So you tied it up in preparation for the mitzvah, but it's not yet the mitzvah because it's not Yom Tov. It's just Hazmana. Hazmana means designation. You designated that this will be your lulav, but it's not a lulav yet because it's not Yom Tov. Yeah. So if that's the case, then it wasn't considered in the category of the mitzvah yet to say that it was already rejected. Okay, then it says you can't take the berries off on Yom Tov. However, let's say you did remove the berries on Yom Tov. Kosher, then it's going to be kosher. The ashkarei mas, when did the berries turn black? Let's say they were black originally. And Yom Tov comes in, the berries are black. Black means that it's possible. And yeah, the Gemara over here ignores the being tied aspect of it, unless you have another gear so that this is quote. But it became black yesterday. And yesterday means at the time when Yom Tov came in. Gemara says, well, that's more than just Hazmana. That's more than just designation. That's Dichay Meikara. That means it's rejected as Yom Tov comes in, the beginning of Yom Tov. There should be an answer that an initial rejection is not considered rejected because you can take the berries off after on Yom Tov and it's going to be kosher. Rather, the pshat over here is that the berries were on it yesterday. They just weren't black yet. They turned black. They turned black this morning when it was already Yom Tov. So what we're saying now is that originally when Yom Tov came in, it was acceptable. And it just turned black now. The Gemara says, well, nira v'nitchu. That means that it came in acceptable and then it gets rejected later. Shamat minei nira v'nitchu chayze v'nira. That means that something that was initially acceptable, then gets rejected, can come back to being acceptable because you can take the berries off.
Conditional rejection.
Conditional rejection, as long as it's there. Right. So the Gemara says, like, we don't have really a proof for this. Why? The truth is that really it was already black yesterday. We'll get one answer. We won't get two answers. The one answer that we'll get is that an initial rejection can come back and be acceptable. But if it was acceptable at once, and then it was rejected, for it to come back to be acceptable, that we don't have an answer for. Yeah. That's a bigger chiddush. Dichem Yikara is less of a chiddush to come back. It was never, it's sort of like, let's say like a child, this is not the halakhic example, but a child isn't eligible to daven for the Amud or something. He's a child. He's not eligible. And then he becomes of age, so then he becomes eligible. So fine. So that's not a problem. But if something happens that he's not eligible later, then how do we know that you accept him back? That's worse. Right. That's worse. So here we have a mitzvah. It's all borrowed from Karbanos. That an animal that's acceptable to be used as a sacrifice. So If it wasn't a sacrifice, yeah. But it was initially had a problem, and then the problem went away. And then it becomes a sacrifice, that's okay. But once it's a sacrifice and then it gets rejected, then you want to take it back. That was more of a problem. Okay. Now we say, Taner Rabbanan, starting a brayse, ein mematim b'yamtiv. You're not supposed to remove the berries on Yamtiv. What's the problem of removing the berries? You're making it into a keli. We don't actually mean a keli that it can contain water or something. We mean that it's something that's usable in the lulav. Because originally it wasn't usable in the lulav. It's just a myrtle branch, but you can't use it. So when you make it usable, so then it becomes a problem. It becomes acceptable, but making it usable is a problem on Yom Tov because you're not supposed to make kelim on Yom Tov. So Mishum Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon Amra Mamatin. In the name of Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, who's Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon? Shimon Bar Yochai's son. 133. In the name of Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, they said that you're allowed to remove the berries on Yom Tov. Gemara says, "Vakamasakin mana bi Yom Tov." But you're fixing something. You're making it into a mana means a keli. You're making it into something usable on Yom Tov. How could Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon say this? He's a friend of Rabbi Danasim. Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon. Just like he's looking at the chart.
Yeah.
Same line, yeah. They were chavrusins at one point. So, Rav Ashi says, Rashi gives an interesting pshat. You weren't taking the berries off to fix the hadas, that it should now be acceptable in the lulav. You were hungry. You took the berries off to eat. What's the problem? You're just eating the berries. I don't know if that about. This guy is eating them. Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon Savar Lakavua. Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon holds like his father. And Shimon Bar Yochai says, "Damar davar shein miskaven mutter." If you didn't intend for the malacha, then it's permissible. Rabbi Shimon holds about that the intention makes it into the malacha. If you don't intend for the malacha, then it's acceptable. So what's happening here is that you're not intending to make it into a cake. You're intending just to eat the berries. So that's why Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon says you're allowed to remove the berries on Yom Tov because he didn't intend to make it into a cake. The Gemara asks for Abaye v'Rava d'Amri Tavayu Meider Rabbi Shimon b'Sekreish v'Layamas. Abaye and Rava both say that Rabbi Shimon doesn't say this in every case. The example over here is if a child wants to play with the chicken's head, like a puppet, old-fashioned puppet. They use the real thing. So they would cut off the head of the chicken and give it to the child to play with. They probably washed it. But anyway, no, I'm not so old. So there's a problem with cutting off the head of a chicken on Shabbos because you're killing the chicken. So someone can say, I didn't intend to kill the chicken. I just wanted to play with the head. Yeah, what do you know? It died. But that wasn't my intention. So the expression here is sekreish v'layamas. You cut off the head and you expect it not to die. It's 100% of the times that the head gets cut off that it dies. That's called sekreisha. It's 100% going to happen. Don't tell me that you didn't intend it. So here also, you took the berries off. 100% of the time that you take majority of the berries off, the hadas becomes kosher. So it's a sekreisha. You can't tell me that you didn't intend to make it kosher because you were just eating. There was a discussion, about an animal that was missing a heart. Yeah, and it was the Rabbanim didn't know. There was an argument amongst the Vaiskim, is it treif or not? One said that it's impossible that it didn't have a heart. It lived. Of course it had a heart. So what happened? The cat ran away with it. And there was another one, the other rabbi said, no, the other organs can function as a heart. And it could be that it never had a heart. Without a heart, it would be trait, of course. I don't think in the place it even mentions an animal without a heart. That wasn't one of them. Yeah. I don't know. There's two views. This was more of a Shulchan Aruch discussion. It wasn't a human. It was an animal. It was in the abattoir in the Schlachter. So if I vaccinate somebody and I'm not kill them, or just get them immunity, but 90% of people die. Yeah. I'm not going to comment. I'll get the end. Yeah, I don't want to lose my. Let's say remove your site. Okay. There's a very cute answer talking about that. There's a he has another Ishana. He has other Hadassah. So he doesn't necessarily need this as a Keli. He's not making this one useful because he has others. That's one shot. Yeah. Place was strange. Rashi says, Keli, it's not fixing anything. You're just eating it. Okay. Tanarabana was taught in a brisa. Let's say the knot came out from the lulav. You tied it up before Yom Tov, and then it came out. So you wrap it up like a vegetable, the way you wrap a bundle of vegetables, which means that you don't tie it, you just twist it around the thing. Why don't you just make a bow, like you do on your shoes? Not a real knot. We have a problem making a knot on Yom Tov, but make a bow. It says, Hamani Rabbi Yehuda Damarni Vakshir Malaisei. This is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that holds that a bow is considered a knot, who doesn't allow bows on Yom Tov Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, we know another opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. He says that you need a real knot for the lulav, because he learned, it says, and it says, that just like over there, it needs to be a knot, it needs to be a bundle. So over here needs a knot. He has a real limud. He has a source. For him, it has to be tied in a knot. What are you telling me? You can wrap it like a vegetable. So it says, just because we're holding like Rabbi Yehuda that says that a bow is considered a knot, doesn't mean that we accept every opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. You're asking us, why don't you say to make a bow? Okay, we don't accept bows because Rabbi Yehuda says it. So if you're accepting Rabbi Yehuda, then why don't you accept Rabbi Yehuda's opinion about 100 other things? It says, well, we didn't do that. We only accepted this opinion. Okay. Mishnah says, Arava Bezula V'Yavesha Psula. A stolen Arava. Yeah, I don't know why someone would do this, but if someone stole an Arava, or if an Arava is dried out, that's possible. It's interesting Rashi that says, what's going on in these Mishnayos? We had Lulav HaGazel, we had Hadas HaGazel, we had Arava Gzula. Usually the Mishnayos would throw everything all together. Let's say Lulav, Hadas, Arava, and maybe an Esrik as well, which is going to come up next. Psula. Why don't we just list it all together? It says that each Mishnah has one detail that only applies to that Mishnah. So, for example, Tzine Harabarzel, with the palm trees, the Iron Mountain, that only applies to the lulav. The Hadas is the only one that had the berries. And Arava is going to have also its unique halacha. So therefore, because of those, each unique halacha, it had to divide it into a separate clause. It comes from a tree of idol worship, or it comes from a city that needs to be destroyed, it's puzzle. Niktam Reisha, if the top was snipped off. Nifritzu Allah, if the leaves were torn off. The top was cut off. The leaves were torn off. Tzafzufa, and also the type of arava that's called tzafzufa, that's puzzle. We'll see what that is. Kamusha, if it's dried out, or some of the leaves are torn off, or not torn off. Nashu means they fell off. V'shalbal, if it comes from a field that doesn't need to be irrigated, it's enough. It's sufficient to rainwater. So then all of those are kasha. These last cases, starting to wither, some of the leaves fell off, or it comes from a field that relies on the rain. The rain is sufficient. All of those are kasha. Let's see why that's significant. Mar's going to explain. The willows of the stream. Means they have to grow by the stream. Another pshat. Arbi nachal. What does it mean? The willows of the stream. That the leaves are drawn like a stream. It's along the leaf. Tan yidach. Start in the brisa. Another brisa. Arbi nachal. Willow of a stream. Ainly ela arbi nachal. I would only think that the willow needs to grow at a stream. Shel baal v'shel harim minayin. Let's say it grows in a field that's supplied by rainwater, or it could be a river. Well, actually, the nachal would be the river. Let's say it grows on a field without a river, rain-fed, and let's say it grows in the mountain. How do you know that's kosher? It says Talmud Laimar Arvei Nachal Mikol Makom. It says Arvei in the plural. Willows. Tells me that it doesn't actually need to grow by the stream. It's a willow of a stream, but it doesn't actually need to be there. It's including something else. The inclusion of something else is telling me that was just a description, but it doesn't mean that that's a qualification. Abishal Leimer Arve Shtayim. Abishal says that Arve means two. Achas lelulav, achas lemikdash. One is for the lulav. You need a willow for the lulav. And you also need one for the Beis Hamikdash. They had a whole ceremony in the Beis Hamikdash with the ravas, with willows. We'll learn about it in the next parak. Next parak, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, what Abishal is telling me is that he doesn't hold of the willow that grows by the on the mountain. He doesn't, or a baal doesn't hold of that. It needs to actually grow by a river. Why? Because his plural is not telling me the extra. It's not including the willow that doesn't grow by the river. His plural is telling me the Beis Hamikdash. I need an extra one for the Beis Hamikdash for that ceremony. Okay, Rabbanan Lemikdash Minalo. How did the Rabbanan know that you need an arava for the Beis Hamikdash? That there's a whole ceremony. So Hilchos HaGemir, they know it from Halach L'Moshe Misinai. It's a tradition. Yeah, Rashi tells us that a lot of times gives me three examples, and it says these three are Halach L'Moshe Misinai. And so in our case, we have Esenetias, 10 young saplings that are planted in a field. There's a special halacha about that. It's halacha Moshe Misinai. Normally, the laws of Shemitah apply a bit before the actual Shemitah year. Certain things start Pesach, certain things start 3 months before, some things start 1 month before. So these trees should really be a month before. You should not be allowed to plow the field around the trees. They would plow around the trees, and it would help the nutrients get into the soil or whatever. So, because these are young trees, and there's 10 of them in it's called the Besa in a certain area. So 10 trees equally spread out in this area, you're allowed to plow that field all the way up until Rosh Hashanah of the Shemitah year. Yeah, we're talking about today's Beis Elul. We're talking about yesterday, the halacha would have been that you had to stop plowing this field. Now it's saying that you don't have to stop plowing because you have 10. Once you have 10 in their saplings, they need that nutrition. So all the way up to plow the whole month, all the way up this year's the Shemitah. I think.
I have such a field.
Yeah. Yeah, in Israel. Yeah. Well, you can plow it the whole next year in America, but in Israel, it's going to have to stop. I think it's a Shemitah. I don't know if that's what someone told me. So that's the first halacha of the halacha. The second halacha is arava, that there's a celebration that they do in the Beis Hamikdash around the Mizbeach with these big aravas. And then there's Nisach HaMayim, there's another celebration with the pouring of the water that they did every morning and Sukkot. All of those are halacha l'meshmi Sinai. So that was in response to Abba Shaul learns it from the pasuk that we have that celebration. The Rabbanan learn it from halacha l'meshmi Sinai. Tana Rabbanan, Arvi Nachal. Said in the Brisa quotes the pasuk. It says, "Arbi nachal, willows of a stream. Hagdelas ala nachal. This is it grows by the stream. Pratu tzaftufa hagdela beinaharim. This is excluding the tzaftufa that grows between the mountains." Yeah. Another thing from Providence is around the block from my house. They have this big weeping willow tree. It just hangs. The leaves hang down. So I remember my father telling me it's a willow tree. I said, "Oh, so we could use it." He said, "No, you can't use it. It has to grow by the water." So anyway, it's not that it has to grow by the water. It has to be the type that grows by the water. And this is not the type that grows by the water. This grows everywhere. So, the weeping willow is not the willow that's. I don't know if that's the tzaftufa, but anyway, over here it says tzaftufa grows between the mountains, and this is it being excluded here because it says Arbi Nachal. Amar Reb Zera. Reb Zera says, "Mikra, how do you know that there's a problem with tzaftufa?" So it says Kachal Mayim Rabim Tzaftufa Samay. I placed you by the great waters, but you were placed as a tzaftufa, which means that you were like, you were not where you belong. You're supposed to be at the great waters, but it turned out that you became a tzaftufa.
You call somebody
That means he's not by the water. Yeah. This is an expression that it's talking about that Hashem put us, made us that we should be together with Torah, but we ended up going to the mountains, but there's no Torah. So he put us that we should always be next to the Torah, and this is the prophet describing what we did wrong. Amalei Abaya. So you see, tzaftufa means that it's not at the water. Abaya says, "V'dilma prushika mefarish." How do you know that's the pshat in the pasuk? I could read that pasuk and it's going to say exactly the opposite. Yeah. It says, no wonder people didn't listen to the prophet. They weren't clear what they said. So it says, "Look, Kachal Mayim Rabim. I put you at great waters. And what are you? Tzaftufa. Grows by the great waters." Maybe it's exactly the opposite of the way we just learned it. That the tzaftufa is exactly what grows by the way. The Marzim Kain, my summers. What does it mean? He placed it. Amar Abavo, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ani Amarti Yisrael Lefani Kachal Hamayim Rabim. Abavo says, Hashem says. This is the explanation. I said that the Jewish people should be placed like a kachas. Like a plant by the great waters. My neo arava, that would be a arava, the willow. Behain samo atzman ketzavtzva shebaharim, but they made themselves like a tzavtzva by the mountains. So we're fine without it. Ikad masnila lahaikra masnisa. Some learned this not on the Brisa, but they learned it directly on the Mishnah. Or maybe not. Maybe it means they learned it on the Brisa. Maybe this was what it means is that this was part of the Brisa. It wasn't Reb Zeiru that said this. Yeah. It goes like this. Kachal mayim rabim tzavtzva shmai. That this is the pasuk is being quoted by the Brisa. And Maskefla Reb Zeira asked, maybe it means that the tzavtzva grows by the water. Then if that's the case, what does it mean it was placed? And then we conclude with Amar Rabavo, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ani Amarti Yisrael Lefani Kachal Mayim Rabim, Ma'ini Ora Rava Ve'in Samatrim K'tzavtzva Shebaharim. Okay. People were supposed to be by Torah, by the water, and they put themselves into the mountains as a tzavtzva. Ezu arava ve'ezu tzavtzva. What's the difference in a rava and a tzavtzva? Making a big deal. One's kosher, one's not. For the lulav, arava kanashla adam. Arava, the stem is red. Ba'alashla masha, and the leaf is long. Upia chalak, and the edge of it is sharp. Tzavtzva, this other branch, this other tree. Kanashla lavan, the stem is white. Balashla agal, and the leaf is round. Pia daimala and instead of being smooth at the end, it twists like a sickle. The Gemara says that's a problem. But Tanya dimun lamagal kosher, dimun lameser puzzle. If it's similar to a magal, a sickle, then it's kosher. If it's similar to a meser, which is another type of knife, but here we're referring to the teeth. If it's serrated, then it's puzzle. Amar Abaya says kitanihi bechilfa gila. That's talking about chilfa gila. Chilfa gila is a type of arava. And over there, that arava is acceptable, even though it's bent, even though the leaf is bent. But other aravas are not. Amar Abaya says, "Shmamina hay chilfa gila kasha leishana." Abaya says, we see from this that chilfa gila that's being accepted as hishana, even though the leaf bends, we see that it's kosher. When it says pshita, that's obvious. Well, maybe it has another name, a modifier. Remember, we had a whole discussion, things that have a modifier, maybe it's not what the Torah intended originally, because it has this modifier on the name. So it says, maybe it's takapasul because of the modifier. The Gemara says, Torah never said that it needs to be an arava. It just says an arve nachal, something that grows by the stream. And so it didn't say specifically this and not that. It would just give me a general term. So even if it has a modifier, it's not a problem. Amar Rav Chisda says, the following things changed their name when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Chilfasa, Arbasa, Chilfasa. They switched names.
People call them.
Yeah, because these are objects. Hi. So an arava is now called chilfa gila, and chilfa is called arava. My nafkamina. What's the difference if it changed the name? It says the lulav. That means when you go to buy a lulav and you say I want aravas, don't say you want aravas because they're going to give you chilfa. Say you want chilfa and they'll give you aravas. Yeah, I'm not sure. But there's a difference. Shipura chatzaitrita and chatzaitrita is shipura. A shofar is now called a trumpet. The trumpet's called a shofar. My nafkamina, what's the difference? Well, the shofar is Rosh Hashanah. If you want to hear the shofar of Rosh Hashanah, you don't tell the guy blow the shofar. You have to tell him blow the trumpet, and then you'll get a shofar blown. Pesarta, pesara, and pesara, pesarta. A big table is a small table. Small table is a big table. What's the difference for that? That's the difference is lemekach and memka for buying and selling. Amar abaya. That means if you want to buy the thing and the guy delivers you the wrong thing, you say, well, you have to ask for the opposite one to get what you want. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, opposite day. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Afani I have one more. It says Bekasi of Lila Bekasi. There's two parts of the stomach. Remember in Chulin we had different parts of the stomach. Anyway, one part of the stomach had a thicker skin, had like a double skin, and if there would have been a needle that penetrated part of the skin, we would say that it's still kosher because the other skin is still intact. So, but that's only by one part of the stomach. Another part it doesn't work. So he says that the name for these two parts of the stomach has switched. So if the needle is in this part of the stomach, you have to know that that's the wrong one, because the name has been switched. What's the difference? If there's a needle in the base of kaisis, called base of kaisis because if you look at the skin of it, it had like a beehive sort of look to it. Remember one of the so a needle in that would have been kosher because that has a double skin. Okay. Amar Rava Bar Yosef. Afani Aimer Bavel Borsif Bavel. I say that the land of Bavel is now called Bursa. Not that I say, but it's the name Bavel has been switched for Borsif. And when you say Borsif, you're referring to Bavel. Yeah, there's complications when it comes to writing a get. You send the get with the messenger, it comes from outside of Eretz Yisrael, he has to make a statement that I was there at the signing of the get and it was done Lishma. However, if he comes from Bavel, where Bavel is B'nai Torah, he doesn't have to make that statement because we know that it was done acceptable. It was acceptable, and we know that it's also travelers and people would be able to recognize the signature. But the problem is that Bavel isn't really Bavel. Bavel is really Borsif. And Borsif is Bavel. So you have to know, where did you come from? So you came from Borsif? You came from Bavel? Okay, good. You don't have to make the statement. Right. Yeah. Yeah, the name, we don't use we use names of cities in the actual get. Here we're not talking about writing the name of the get, the name of the city in the get. We weren't referring to that. Here we're talking about if it's considered Bavel regarding other halachas that go along with the messenger that brings a get. Special halachas of Bavel that would only apply if it comes from a place called Borsif. Because Borsif is Bavel. If he came from Bavel, though, they wouldn't have those halachas because he's really coming from Borsif. Yeah. With all the Chalm stories, where the guy goes to sleep on the way, he's going to Warsaw. And didn't know when he wakes up which direction he should walk. So he put his shoes in one direction. Somehow someone came and was going to take his shoes and decided not to take them, facing the other direction. Anyway, so he continued on his way to Warsaw. When he woke up and he came to see his street, his house, he says, "Oh, there must be another place that has the same, multiverse, multi-universe, that we have this." Anyway, turns out he's right. Okay. I don't even remember all the Chum stories, and so from then on. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Shleisha hadasim shtei arabas lulav echad v'esrog echad." 3 hadasim, 2 arabas, 1 lulav and 1 esrog. Okay. Sounds like what we do. Except we have a lot of hadasim, but we add. But here we're saying the original. Now it says, Afilu Shnayim Ketumim V'Echad Katum. You said 3 Hadassim. It's acceptable if 2 of them are clipped, are snipped on the top. I was going to ask, if you said 3, then why is it acceptable if 2 of them are kosher? That means you're really saying 1. We'll see. Reb Tarfon says, even if all 3 are cut, it's still kosher. Reb Tarfon holds that they don't need to be fully grown on the top. They could be snipped. It's still kosher. Reb Kiva says you take 1 of everything. Follow? You don't have 3 hadassim. You have 1 hadah. You only have 1 arav. You don't have 2 aravas. Tanya was taught in a brayse. Rabbi Shmuel Shmuel says Priyetz Hadar Echad, 1 esrog. Kapes Tamarim, a palm branch Echad. That's 1. An Afetz Aves, the willow. I'm sorry. An Afetz Aves, the myrtle. Shleisha. And Arvei Nachal Ishtayim. Yeah, I don't know where he gets Aves. Why it's Shleisha? Maybe because it sounds like it's braided. And then he goes on, he says, even if 2 of them are snipped and 1 of them is intact, it's going to be kosher. Tarfon says, no, you need 3, which is the same like Rabbi Shmuel said originally, but however, he says, even if all 3 are snipped. Rabbi Kiva says, just like the lulav is 1, so to the esrog is 1, and so to the hadas is 1, and so to the arav is 1. You only have 1 of each. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer said to him, maybe you also want to tie the esrog into the bundle. It would have a container that holds the esrog as well. Okay. When it says the list of items, it says Priyetz Hadar, and then there's like a big comma, and then it says Kapis Tamarim. We don't have the connector vav by Kapis Tamarim, which means that the esrog is independent. By the other ones, it says Ve'arvei Nachal Ve'anafetz Aves. It has the connecting vav. They call it consecutive vav. So that tells me that those are all connected. Those are tied together, but the esrog is remains separate. How do you know that you need all 4? You can't just take 3 or 2 or 1 of them. So I'm doing the mitzvah with 1. You divide the word lakachtam into 2 words. Lakach tama. You have to take it completely. You can't just have 1, 2, or 3. You have to have all 4. Now the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel, what was he telling me? That I need 3, but 2 of them could be clipped? Manavshach. If they need to be whole, then you should need all whole. If you don't need whole, then how could they be, even 1 of them be snipped? They don't need to be whole. Then why do you need 1 of them to be whole? They don't need to be whole. Have them all snipped, like Reb Tarfon said. Amar Bira, Amar Abami. Bira says name of Abami. Chazer by Rabbi Shmuel. You're right. It's a good point. Rabbi Shmuel actually changed his mind. And you have 2 opinions here in the Mishnah of Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. First, he says you need 3. Then he changed his mind and he said you really only need 1. How do you see that? Because he says 2 of them could be clipped. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halacha Reb Tarfon. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel, the Halacha Reb Tarfon, that it's going to be kosher even if the top of the lulav is not the lulav. The top of the hadassim are snipped off. Shmuel follows his reasoning. Shmuel told the people that sold the hadassim. You ready? Ashvu usvino. Lower your prices. And if you don't, the Rishna Lachuk Reb Tarfon, I'm going to paskin for everyone like Reb Tarfon that we don't need you. We can get dasim from anyone. You know why? I'll paskin like Reb Tarfon that says that hadasim are kosher even if they're snipped on the top. I don't need your special. Those hadasim I could find anywhere. If you don't lower your price, I'll paskin that. So 1 second. My time. What's going on over here? Ilim Shum Demekel. If Reb Shmuel is lenient, religious look Rabbi Akiva, let him be even more lenient. Should go like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said that you only need one. Rabbi Tarfon says you need 3 of them. It says the Mekel Tvei, he's even more lenient. Gemara explains more of this inferior quality is very common. But Chad v'leikatim l'shchiach, v'paschon like Rabbi Akiva, I would still need one that would be perfect. But, so he was saying he was even being more lenient. He was saying, I'll pass like Rabbi Tarfon that says that I don't need anyone perfect. Yeah, I need 3, but that's going to be more common to get 3 imperfect than one perfect. Let's leave it over here.
Wow. Bye, everybody.